The towering trees, which once stretched proudly toward the sky, now stood as bare skeletons, their bark peeling like ancient parchment. Leaves that once shimmered emerald had turned brittle and brown, crumbling at the slightest touch. The rivers, once clear and rushing, had slowed to a mere trickle, their beds cracked and parched under the relentless sun. Animals that had thrived here for centuries were vanishing, one by one, without explanation. The jungle's heart was growing silent, and with each fading heartbeat, the air grew heavier, as if mourning its own decay. Amidst this desolation, one figure moved with a quiet grace, the last guardian of the jungle, an ancient tiger, his fur streaked with silver and scars, his amber eyes deep pools of sorrow. He moved through the fading foliage like a shadow, each step measured and careful, as if aware that he was treading on the last breaths of a dying world. The tiger's solitude was profound. No companion stirred beside him. No playful cubs chased his tail. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, abandoning its usual whispers. His roar, once a proud declaration of strength, was now a rare, mournful echo. Memories haunted him, vivid glimpses of a lush jungle bathed in sunlight, teeming with life and laughter. He remembered the days when his roar rallied the animals, when the rivers sparkled like jewels, and when the trees swayed in harmony with the earth's heartbeat. But those days had become dreams, slipping further away with every passing season. Beneath his paws, the cracked earth seemed to pulse faintly, a dying pulse, begging for salvation. And deep within, a secret stirred, one he was compelled to uncover. The tiger carried not just the weight of his loneliness, but a burden of forgotten promises and unspoken truths. He paused by the dried riverbed, lowering his massive head to sniff the air. The scent was different, bitter and unnatural. A shiver ran through his spine. The jungle was more than dying, it was being drained, its life force stolen. As dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and violet, the tiger's amber eyes caught a flicker of movement, a shadow slipping between the dying trees. A reminder that he was not alone. But this presence was not friend, it was a silent threat watching patiently, waiting for the right moment to strike. With a heavy breath, the tiger lifted his head and let out a low, rumbling growl that mingled with the rustling leaves. It was a sound that carried both warning and a plea, the jungle's last breath, echoing across a world on the edge of oblivion. And so began his final journey, through lands fading into silence, driven by a hope buried deep in his ancient heart, to uncover the truth behind the curse that was killing his home and to find a way to save what remained before the jungle's last breath was lost forever. The tiger's paws carried him deeper into the jungle's heart, where even the faintest pulse of life clung desperately to the earth. The shadows grew longer, and the air thickened with a heavy silence that pressed upon him like a shroud. Then, hidden among the tangled roots of an ancient fig tree, he discovered the cave, a place whispered about in stories passed down through generations, though few dared approach it anymore. The cave's mouth yawned wide, draped in vines that had long ceased their climb, hanging like the forgotten curtains of a once sacred theater. Inside, the air was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the parched wilderness outside. The tiger stepped cautiously, his eyes adjusting to the dim light where faint shafts pierced the gloom. Ancient markings adorned the jagged walls, their faded pigments still telling a tale, symbols of unity, respect, and solemn pacts forged long ago between the animals and the spirit of the jungle. These were the sacred vows that had once protected this land, promises etched in stone and memory, that all creatures would live in harmony, guard the balance, and honor the spirit that breathed life into every leaf and stream. But the tiger's heart sank as he noticed the signs of desecration. The once pristine markings were defaced, clawed and chipped, marred by cruel symbols that did not belong. The air carried a faint stench of dark magic, a corruption that seemed to seep from the very stone. A chill ran through him. Somewhere in the shadows, a presence lurked, unseen but watching. The jungle had long whispered warnings of a betrayal, but this proof was far more tangible and chilling than mere rumor. As the tiger's keen eyes scanned the cavern, a faint movement caught his attention, a shadow flickering beyond the reach of his sight, slipping silently through the fissures and cracks. It was a watcher, patient and unseen, its gaze fixed upon him. The jungle's fate, it seemed, was tied not only to the decay of its trees and rivers but to an enemy hidden in darkness, one who reveled in the shattered bonds and broken promises. The tiger's ears twitched, and he pressed forward, driven by a mix of fear and determination. The whispers of the past were more than echoes now, they were a summons. To save the jungle, he would have to face not only the wounds inflicted by time but the sins buried deep within its history. As he emerged from the cave, the dying sun cast long shadows over the land, and the wind finally stirred, carrying with it the faintest breath of a warning. The Guardian was not alone, and the battle for the jungle's soul had only just begun. The jungle, once cloaked in vibrant greens and alive with the hum of countless creatures, now held its breath as a new presence entered its fading realm. The tiger sensed it before he saw it, a disturbance in the air, a ripple in the silence. From the horizon emerged a figure, moving with a calculated purpose. Not just a hunter, but something far more dangerous. Clad in worn, dark garments that seemed to absorb the dying light, the man carried an aura that chilled the air itself. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, gleamed with a hunger that no ordinary poacher possessed. This was the outsider, a cunning and ruthless man who had turned to dark sorcery in pursuit of a power few dared seek. He was drawn here by tales whispered in shadowed corners, rumors of a relic hidden deep within the jungle, a relic said to hold the spirit of the land captive, a source of unimaginable power. As the tiger watched from the underbrush, his instincts screamed a warning. This man was not merely a thief of flesh and bone, he was a predator who hunted the very soul of the jungle. But there was something more troubling, something that struck the tiger with icy dread. Clutched in the outsider's satchel was a small, worn talisman. It bore a symbol. Ancient and unmistakable. The same emblem that once marked the tiger's ancestors, those who had once walked as proud guardians and keepers of the jungle's sacred balance. The tiger's heart tightened. The man's arrival was no coincidence. The threads of fate, woven long ago by betrayal and greed, were pulling tight. The tiger's own lineage was bound to this darkness, and now the past threatened to consume the present. A low growl rumbled deep within the tiger's chest as he weighed his next move. To confront the outsider meant risking everything. But to ignore him was to abandon the jungle to certain death. Hidden beneath the canopy, the tiger's amber eyes burned with determination. The ancient pacts had been broken, and the jungle's future hung by a fragile thread. The outsider took his first step into the heart of the dying jungle, unaware that the last guardian was already stalking his path, a silent shadow waiting for the moment to strike. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as the tiger moved through the gnarled undergrowth, his mind a tempest of memories and regret. The air was thick with decay, but it was the weight of the past that pressed heaviest on his soul. Visions flickered behind his amber eyes, scenes passed down through generations like fading echoes. His ancestors had once been proud protectors, guardians of a sacred covenant with the jungle's spirit. Together, they maintained the delicate balance of life, a pact woven with respect and trust. But pride had given way to desperation. When famine and danger threatened their pride, some among his lineage made a grievous choice. Secret meetings were held beneath blood-red moons, where whispers turned to promises, deals forged with a man who wielded dark sorcery. The outsider offered power beyond imagining, the chance to secure dominance and survival at any cost. Blinded by ambition, the tiger's ancestors broke the sacred bonds, trading the jungle's spirit for personal gain. The relic, a symbol of that betrayal, was born a prison for the very life force that once sustained the land. As the tiger retraced these painful steps, his heart ached with inherited guilt. He carried the burden of their treachery, a legacy staining every fiber of his being. The jungle's slow death was not merely nature's failing, it was a wound inflicted by those sworn to protect it. He stopped at a clearing, the earth cracked and barren beneath a sky heavy with gathering clouds. Here, where his ancestors once gathered in ceremony, silence now reigned. The echoes of lost voices haunted the wind, a chorus of betrayal and broken promises. The tiger lowered his head, resolve hardening within him. Redemption was no longer a distant hope, it was a necessity. To save the jungle, he would have to confront the sins of his bloodline and carry their consequences alone. With a final glance at the withering trees around him, the tiger turned toward the jungle's heart, where the relic awaited, and with it, the chance to heal the wounds that had shattered the bonds of old. Guided by a map of scars etched deep within his memory and the fading whispers of the jungle's last breath, the tiger ventured into the darkest depths, a place where sunlight barely pierced the dense canopy, and shadows twisted like restless spirits. The air grew thick with a strange, oppressive energy, as if the very essence of life was being sucked dry. The ground beneath his paws was cold and unnervingly still. Here, the pulse of the jungle had nearly ceased. There, hidden beneath a tangled web of vines and fallen branches, lay the relic, a small, ominous object that shimmered with unnatural light. It was neither stone nor metal, but something in between, alive with a sinister glow that seemed to breathe with a dark will of its own. The relic pulsed rhythmically, like the heartbeat of a captive beast. Around it, the plants wilted, leaves curled into themselves, and the air tasted bitter, tainted with the residue of dark magic. As the tiger approached, a sudden wave of visions crashed over him, fleeting images of the jungle's suffering, rivers reduced to cracked beds, animals disappearing into thin air, forests burning in silent agony. And then, a terrifying glimpse of himself trapped, helpless, as the world crumbled around him. The relic's curse was a living nightmare, siphoning the spirit's power and binding it in chains forged by greed and betrayal. The tiger's muscles tensed, but his gaze did not waver. He understood now, to break the curse, to save the jungle, he would have to confront not only the relic but the darkness that empowered it and the man who sought to control it. With a low, steady growl, he prepared himself for the battle that would decide the fate of the land he loved. The tiger stood before the relic's eerie glow, its sinister light casting flickering shadows on his weathered fur. The jungle's faint heartbeat pulsed weakly beneath his paws, a fragile rhythm begging for salvation. In the heavy silence, a voice slithered through the air, the outsider's voice, cold and tempting. "Give me the relic," the man said, stepping from the shadows. His eyes gleamed with dark promise. "Together, we could harness its power. Rule this jungle, bend it to our will." The tiger's gaze hardened. He felt the weight of generations pressing down, the betrayal that had stained his bloodline demanding redemption. But the choice before him was brutal and clear: to shatter the relic and free the jungle's spirit, he would have to sacrifice his own physical form, surrender his life so that new life could begin. A fierce storm rumbled overhead as memories surged. The warmth of his lost family, the laughter of cubs long gone, the promise whispered beneath ancient trees to protect this sacred land. The tiger's muscles trembled with pain and resolve. Survival tugged at him, but so did duty, the unyielding call to protect, even at the cost of everything. The outsider's grin twisted darkly. "Or join me, and watch everything die." The tiger's final roar split the thunder, a vow of sacrifice, a last defiance against the creeping darkness. With one last breath, he lunged toward the relic, ready to give all he had to save the jungle's soul. The sky cracked open with thunder, the storm's fury mirroring the tiger's final battle. Lightning carved jagged scars across the heavy clouds as rain began to fall, first in soft whispers, then in fierce torrents that soaked the thirsty earth. The tiger stood tall, muscles coiled like springs, eyes blazing with determination and pain. His roar broke through the storm. A raw, primal sound filled with sorrow, hope, and the weight of countless generations. It echoed through the dying jungle, shaking the branches, stirring the very air. The relic cracked beneath the force of his voice, splintering into shards that pulsed and faded like dying stars. With its destruction, a wave of energy rippled outward, life flooding back into the trees, rivers, and soil. Leaves unfurled, rivers swelled, and the animals stirred, sensing the return of the jungle spirit. But the tiger, drained beyond measure, staggered. His body began to dissolve into mist, slowly fading like a whisper lost in the wind. His amber eyes met the sky one last time before he vanished completely, swallowed by the rising fog. The jungle was saved, alive again and vibrant, but its guardian was gone, leaving behind only the memory of a final, earth-shaking roar. The jungle breathed again, lush and vibrant under the renewed sky, yet a shadow lingered where the tiger once roamed. Whispers spread among the animals, sightings of a ghostly figure prowling the jungle's edges. A spectral beast, larger than life, with eyes that glowed like embers in the dark, carrying the sorrow of 1,000 lost years. No one knew if it was the tiger's spirit or something else, a fusion of light and darkness born from the shattered relic and the outsider's twisted magic. It was both guardian and curse, a restless sentinel caught between worlds, protecting the jungle yet tormented by an eternal prison. The wind carried its mournful growls, a haunting melody that echoed through the mist, a reminder of sacrifice, loss, and the fragile balance between life and death. The jungle thrived, but beneath the vibrant canopy, a restless soul wandered, watching, waiting, forever bound to the land he saved. Though the jungle flourished once more, an uneasy silence settled beneath its canopy, a silence heavier than before, as if the earth itself held its breath in fear. From the shadows left by the outsider's dark sorcery, a deeper evil began to stir, a creeping poison twisting roots and corrupting streams. It was an ancient darkness awakened by greed, feeding on the remnants of the relic's shattered curse. The spectral tiger, caught between the realms of life and death, sensed this threat with a primal fury. His glowing eyes pierced the shadows, wary and vigilant, knowing the fragile peace was at risk. Allies became strangers, and enemies hid behind masks of kindness. The jungle transformed into a labyrinth of shadows where trust was scarce and danger lurked in every corner. The battle for survival was no longer just against a fading curse but against an evil born from the very darkness the tiger had once defied. The Guardian's struggle had only just begun. Years slipped by like whispers through the jungle's canopy. The vibrant green returned, rivers flowed with crystal clarity, and the songs of birds filled the air once again. The jungle thrived. A living testament to the sacrifice made in its darkest hour. But the tiger was gone. No living creature had seen him since the final roar that shattered the relic and brought the rain. Yet, when the mist rises at dawn and the wind stirs the leaves just so, an echo lingers, a deep, resonant roar that rides the air like a ghostly hymn. It is a haunting reminder of the Guardian's eternal watch, a voice from beyond that warns, protects, and mourns. Beneath the jungle's lush facade, secrets remain buried, the scars of betrayal, the price of redemption, and the restless spirit of a protector caught between worlds. The story of the last roar is a legacy whispered to those brave enough to listen, a timeless saga of sacrifice, broken bonds, and nature's relentless vengeance. The jungle waits for a new guardian, for the next chapter, for the day when the roar will rise again.